we have always getting better response from customers. Lot of footfall. From year 2015, we are participating in ProPak Asia Thailand. And this year also, due to COVID, there are lesser movement, but the key customer, who are our customer, and more people who are interested in our product are visiting frequently.
At first, Liquid Box planned to be in ProPak exhibition and have a booth, actual booth there anyway, because we know that people around the world will come to ProPak especially for the packaging business. However, the COVID situation did not support us that much to be physically being there to meet our potential client and also our partners. So ProPak has offered us a hybrid exhibition, which actually answering what we are looking for, because we still want to meet our potential clients and also our partner, but without physically being there. So that's why, with no hesitation, we actually participate in hybrid exhibition.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rose Chitalwan. I will be the moderator for your session for today. Today is the first webinar, which is under the webinars week of ProPak Asia 2021. So for ProPak Asia 2021, it will be coming back on the physical show again at Bytech Bang Na during 16 to 19 of June 2021. And of course, we are going to offer for those who cannot travel within this June. So we are going to offer the virtual exhibition, which will be last for about 3 weeks from 9 to 23 of June, in order for you to catch up with the latest knowledge, the exhibitors and the business, what is going on in the ProPak Asia. You may see in the slide now that we have the date mentioned here. So please save the date for joining with us again. Okay, once again for today, I would like to thanks to the World Packaging Organization that support to have the webinar today. The topic of the webinar series on the first one that we are going to enjoy together in the next 1.5 hours will be on sustainable packaging. The SDG by the UN is very clear on the point on sustainability, how to make the world better. So today, together with me, I have very specialized speakers on the packaging. Some of them are also work on the sustainable packaging. We have our president of the WPO, Mr. Pierre, I would say Professor Dr. Pierre Piana. He is well known in the industry, and he is working on the packaging since 1984. So I will hear a lot from him. He also will join us on the expert panel during 16 to 19 of June to share what is going on in the packaging market. And also we have another ladies from World Packaging Organization, which is the Vice President of the Sustainability. She is really work on the food safety and sustainability for the food sector. Mrs. Nerida Kelton, she will be with us to share on the packaging on terms of how to make it sustainable packaging, and she will showcase a lot of World Star Packaging Award as well. For the last one, we have get support from Seal Air. So thank you very much, Seal Air, to give us the opportunity to learn from your expert, Mr. Surender Soni. So thank you, Mr. Surender Soni. And now I'm going to bring you into the session. May I have a brief a bit? If you have any question, please put on the Q&A box on the bottom of the screen. For those who cannot enter into Zoom application now, we will broadcast it in the YouTube at propakasia.com. And also for those who are already on and want to chit chat with your colleagues, you can go to the chat box, but don't open your video camera and microphone to disturb the audience. So now I'm going to go through the presentation. Will be First 20 minutes will be Mr. Pierre on sustainable packaging into the future. So let's hear from him. The second speaker will cover on a circular and sustainable packaging design. And the last one by Mr. Surendra will cover on sustainable packaging for the food sector. So right now, I will not waste your time. Let's welcome Professor Dr. Pierre to share about his presentation. Welcome, please.
Well, a very good afternoon to everyone. As I bring up my slideshow. Well, welcome. Nice to be with you. And thank you very much, Ms. Rose, for that introduction. We certainly enjoy being part of the ProPak Asia, as we were last year. We have a very good relationship with your organization, and I trust it will be so for many, many more years to come. So thank you. I'd like to kick off by showing this slide and saying that packaging really has a significant role to play in sustainability. And that is definitely through recycling. You can see on this photo the decimation that we are seeing across all continents. We really need to work towards a circular economy. And if one looks particularly at plastic, that we ensure that what we use is recyclable, and therefore a recycling program is initiated. And that which is not, that small percentage, that can always go from an energy recovery perspective. Packaging is necessary. We can't live without it. Maybe our grandparents or our forebears could, but we cannot, because it adds food safety, it adds quality to the product, it extends the shelf life, and it reduces food waste. But we do need to develop solutions that reduce the packaging volume that is ending up in our waterways, our beaches, and the sea. And we in the WPO, we certainly see a future without the waste that we are seeing around the world at the moment. At the moment, we sort of working at a pace that is take, make, and dispose. And we want to change our mindset and change our thinking. So if one looks at where we come from and what has been achieved in the last couple of years within the organization is a significant reduction in food waste in certain areas, and at the same time, a reduction in packaging waste. Now, when I talk about the packaging waste reduction, we have to get the front end correct, that the packaging that we use is recyclable. Otherwise, it cannot be recycled. So a lot of education is required in all the different aspects of packaging. And I'll come to that later in this presentation. So we need to focus on a monoform structure. And we in the WPO are working extremely hard towards extended producer responsibility. So those that produce it take responsibility for what they make and ensure that the majority of that which they make comes back and gets recycled. This is working reasonably successfully in many parts of Europe, but we need to implement this throughout the world. If one looks at this image, and you can see yourself that there's vegetables and fruit all across the globe. And it's important that we can have vegetables and fruit anytime, anywhere. And the only thing that does this, that makes it possible, is packaging. but the packaging has to be recyclable. We need to focus on reducing that packaging waste. And if one looks at these figures, I won't dwell too much on them, but you can see that the recycling rates at the moment are not significant enough. In the plastics area, overall, 20 to 30% only are being recycled. And you can see further down the metals, the paperboard, and the glass. If one looks in the EU in particular, because there's a lot of benchmarking being done across the globe, by 2025, they want all the packaging to be at 65%. And you can see the bigger target for 2030. That's really going to stretch a number of countries in achieving that. And likewise, you can look at all the other figures at the moment. Glass is doing really well, and so is paperboard. The others, so-so. A lot of help is required in many of those areas. I won't dwell too much on this because I know that the next speaker is covering this off. But in the WPO, we have a World Star program that drives towards ensuring that there are sustainability focus in industry, and likewise in the students, because they are our future generation. And these are some of the facts of last year. So just to give you a snapshot of what are some of the things or some of the companies, and I've taken a snapshot of the greater 10 across the world of fast-moving consumer goods companies. And if one looks at what they are doing, they have clear sustainable goals that they're working towards. And that is extended throughout all their supply chains. And most of all, they have a sustainability design guidelines. And the WPO, as we talk, are putting together a global sustainability design guidelines that hopefully will be rolled out across all countries. And we should have that done by the end of this year. I've just taken a snapshot. There are many, many companies. This is Huhtamaki, and just to give you some idea that there's a lot of work being done by converters as we talk. Huhtamaki, at this stage, are claiming they can do nearly 80% replacement of the multi-layered materials. Replace that with a mono solution, a recyclable solution. And likewise, Amcor is doing the same. These are two large companies across the world, one based out of Finland, and Amcor, the largest flexible company in the world. But the consumers, you and I, we need to be aware of the packaging waste. And the only time that we really made aware of it is when we see it on our beaches, as in the left-hand image. And then it hits home. Because there is a need, as you can see in the center two of the meat products, to get that extended shelf life, we need packaging. And I know the third speaker today will be covering that off. And if you see on the right-hand side, we have to reduce single-use plastics. That is imperative. And all of those there are single-use plastics. So the packaging has to be recyclable, and there must be recycling happening. And if one just looks at some of the countries, the USA overall in 28%, which is fairly low. In Europe, 40%. In Asia, we have a lot of work has to be done still. Because otherwise we see more and more of these scenes. This one is in Cambodia, and this is not sustainable. This cannot perpetuate. Because a lot of what we're seeing in that image there, a lot of that is packaging. Some of it's food waste as well. And again, I've just taken a snapshot. I've seen many dump sites in my time as president in the World Packaging Organization. I think I've seen more dump sites than many other people. This one was in Lagos, in Nigeria, where we're having 3 generations living off a dump site. But if one looks at that image, then I think recycling is beginning to happen. They're collecting what they can and taking it to recycling houses, which is great. So what are governments doing around the world? And again, just a snapshot. In Australia, there's certain targets that we have to meet by 2025. In China, they banned importing of a lot of recycled waste. They banned the single-use plastic bags. In 2022, that will happen. In India, there they increasing the collection points, and there are a lot of campaigns around that. In the EU, they're implementing a number of single-use bans across the EU, and the United States, in certain jurisdictions, they're banning plastic bags. So a lot of work can be done still there. In Thailand, banning of the single-use will become effective beginning of this year, 2021, which is fantastic. But if one looks at Latin America, then there are relatively low commitments. And so there is a lot of work being done in those particular countries as we talk. So what are the future challenges? I think that the days of just simply lightweighting are over. But we need to build more infrastructure. It's no use having recyclable materials, but we don't have the collection points to be able to collect it, to send it to the recycling facilities. So more closed loop systems need to be employed across the world. And we need to build more recovery capabilities like polyolefins and pyrolysis and gasification. Because there has to be intentional collaboration between your fast-moving consumer good manufacturers and the packaging converters. They both have to have the same objective and targets. And that is important for us. Otherwise, we will never reach our goals. If one looks at we need to get to a mono-material system, single-layered materials. At the same time, ensuring that we have food-safe grade plastic films. That is imperative. That is a given. But it has to be, there has to be a certain amount of recycled content included in that. And a lot of packaging converters can help the customers. The customers need to talk to their converters. And the more I talk about this, the more I'm hearing that this is starting to happen, more so across the world, which is fantastic. But you have to have a clear method and benchmark it. We all need to understand what's at stake. And we all need to have a clear goal with regards to innovation in packaging. And then we cannot forget the education part. Education of all of us, not only like this image here of grade ones. We all need to be educated more and equip ourselves better, but empower those that need to be empowered at all levels, starting at the primary level. Because folks, and I have to stress this, if you've remembered nothing about my presentation, remember this image. At the rate that we are using up our natural resources across the globe, by 2050, according to the UN, we will require nearly 3 planet Earths. Right at this moment, we're running at 1.5. But if we change our trajectory and implement that which we need to implement, then we can achieve the 2050 goal of having sufficient natural resources that our planet Earth can provide. It becomes a sustainable world. Because, folks, we cannot have another Great Pacific Garbage Patch. For those of you who don't know, you can Google this yourself. Have a look. It lies off the coast of California, between California and Hawaii. And it's the size of Spain and Germany and Italy altogether. So it is massive area of just waste, and a lot of it is packaging waste. I want to end off by showing this video, a very short video, but David Attenborough brings the message across exceptionally well.
By 2050, there could be more plastic than fish in the oceans. Yet the problems start long before plastic reaches our oceans, rivers and beaches, and so must the solutions. We must tackle this flood at the source. We must eliminate the plastic we don't need. We must innovate, so all the plastic we do need is designed to be safely reused, recycled or composted. And we must circulate everything we use, making sure the plastic we produce stays in the economy and never becomes waste or pollution.
Thank you very much, Professor Pierre. I think some technical problem now, but anyway, the video is very clear that please use the plastic that you use for your daily life and keep it in the economies. Don't make it become the waste. So it's take-home message from Prof. Pierre. So right now, I think we are good in the timing. So I would like to introduce you to our next presenters to present on the circular and sustainable packaging design by Mrs. Nerida Keltan. She is the Vice President of Sustainability and Safe Food from World Packaging Organization. Hi, Nerida, are you ready?
I am.
All right. So I give the stage to you, Nerida.
Thank you. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And thank you very much, Rose and the ProPak Informal Markets team for inviting the World Packaging Organization here today with everyone to talk about circular and sustainable packaging. So as natural resources are rapidly diminishing, pollution and the GHG emissions worsen, oceans and waterways are filling up with packaging waste, and integral ecosystems are becoming irreparably damaged. And the world has now been put on notice that we can no longer just talk about things, we've got to start making changes. So how do we make these changes, you ask? Well, it's really simple, and it's what Pierre was talking about. It's talking about a circular economy or circular packaging design. And I find that the easiest way to think of this is to think about that we're trying to rethink the way we design. We're trying to shift the current linear economy and the linear design systems that we have around the world. And it's really simple. We want to design out waste. We want to design out pollution. We want to keep all products and materials in use in a circular motion as much as possible. And we would like to regenerate natural systems along the way. And that's what circular design is all about. Now, everyone here today will be following and trying to adhere to different regulations, different plastics packs, targets, EPR, you name it. Every country around the world has some form of regulation, target or pack that they're following. But at the end of the day, we're trying to achieve the same thing globally. We are trying to make sure that we have circular design, and as Pierre said, we need to make sure that it's truly recyclable in the country that you sell your packaging in. We need to also look at, when we're talking about circular design, the environmental impact. And it's not just the environmental impact of the packaging, it's actually the environmental impact all the way through the supply chain, from paddock to plate. So from production in a farm, whether it's a food item or a beverage, all the way through to the household. So when you're designing your packaging, you need to consider the total environmental footprint, the total environmental impact of the product and the packaging, because they are not mutually exclusive. So this is an example of some sustainable packaging guidelines, and these are ones developed in Australia, but they are a really good, easy, simple example of step change. So take a photo of this or get the slides later, but this gives you 10 points that you can print out and put up on your wall. So when you're thinking about your sustainable design, think about designing for recovery, optimizing material efficiency, designing to reduce product waste, eliminate hazardous materials, use recycled materials, use of renewable materials, design to minimize litter, which is very important, design for transport efficiency, design for accessibility, and that's inclusive and accessible design, and provide consumer information on sustainability. So what does this look like, you ask? Now, as Pierre mentioned, the World Star Packaging Awards are an annual global and prestigious awards program, and it has about 50 countries around the world and their local regional awards programs that feed into the World Star Packaging Awards. And the World Star Packaging Awards represent the best globally for a varying range of categories, but tonight I'm going to talk about the examples of circular and sustainable packaging design. So this is the gold winner for 2020, and it is a New Zealand creamery, so a small New Zealand creamery that decided to move away from glass bottles into a recycled PET. They wanted the look and feel of a glass bottle. So as you can see aesthetically, it still has that feel of a glass bottle. But it's 100% post-consumer recycled PET. And they were the first creamery in the world to move to an rPET design. We then head over to the Netherlands, and they won a bronze. And this is from Yassa Packaging. And it's replacing non-recyclable bags for potatoes. And the benefit of this is that it has it's recyclable paper, it has no plastic coating inside, and it is suitable with all of the vertical form, fill and seal machines. It can be closed without sealing, and it has a self-adhesive system. We then move into Woolworths, which is a large retailer in Australia, and they won the silver in 2020. And what they did was they went into their bakery range. So they identified that bakery had a lot of non-recyclable plastic. So they removed all of their non-recyclable black trays, and they moved into a sugarcane byproduct, and they put it into the bottom base of these trays. They replaced trays in 50 bakery products, and they made sure that it was home compostable in the country that it's sold in. So it's certified for home compostability in Australia, and it's also recyclable by the Australasian Recycling Labelling Program, so that it actually gets recycled back into other products. We then move into Finland, and this is a replacement carton board and lidding, and it replaces 85% less plastic from what it previously had. The lidding material can be separated from the carton board tray. The tray is recyclable. There are no more sleeves, and it's compatible with a number of automatic packing machines. We then head to the USA, And this is from Simply Beverages, and they moved into a PETG, which is a new PET formulation, and they reduced the weight of their packaging by 9%. It's compatible in the country's recyclable stream, and it's the first of its kind in the country. We then head to Austria, and Austria came up with a barrier pack, recyclable pack. And this was one of the conversations that Pierre had in his presentation. So it's fully recyclable plastic laminate, and it's designed for ice cream, pet foods, food and beverage, and it has 2 layers of PET film. It's validated through their industrial recycling streams over in Austria, and it's a suitable alternative for flexible laminates. We then head back to Australia as another example. This is the first recycled PET bottles for the Coca-Cola range in the world. And you will see recently there's been a lot of news about them trialing other countries around the world. So it's wonderful to see it being rolled out across all of the Coca-Cola companies. But this is technically difficult because they actually moved to an rPET across all of their ranges and all of their SKUs. So everything from the carbonated, the sensitive warm-filled, the aseptic packaging, and they reduced 55% of their PET tonnage by replacing it with the rPET. They reduced the use of their virgin materials, and it's recyclable through container deposit schemes in Australia. We then have an example from Sealed Air, and this was a gold winner for Temp Guard, which is a curbside recyclable packaging, and it's designed for chilled applications and for e-commerce. This is a wonderful example of what you can do, small step changes, easy step changes that you can do to replace all of the unnecessary and problematic materials in your streams and replace it with something that's recyclable, that is suitable for the collection processes in the country that you're selling it in. It has a wonderful improved end-of-life recovery. It's a paper pouch liner and virgin kraft, and it is an alternative to polystyrene. We then head to New Zealand, and this is a household cleaning range. Earthwise is quite famous in New Zealand for being all natural, and that's all natural in terms of the ingredients, as well as they tried to move on the outside onto their packaging design to make it more sustainable as well. It has very wonderful on-pack communication for recyclability, in stores, in the end caps, and also on the shop talkers. You can see that they communicate to their customers that this is recycled RHDPE, and that they've taken all of the HDPE from juice bottles and milk bottles and made it into this range. So they're really good at communicating to consumers what they're doing in their packaging changes. We then have an example for the first renewable Gabletop milk carton, and the paperboard is FSC certified, which is a global certification. It's made entirely from bio-based, fully renewable materials, and it has the inside layer is a PE, which is obtained from an ethanol sugarcane. So it's completely recyclable in the system, in the curbside recycling collection process in the country that it's sold in. We then have an example here for produce, and what they have done here is they have changed the inserts, and they have made this a molded paper. And just by changing it to a molded paper, they've reduced the weight of their inserts. It's 100% recyclable, so the tray and the insert are 100% recyclable, curbside recyclable, and it is great for contamination, so it protects for contamination, it avoids overheating of the produce, the paper breathes and absorbs the humidity, and it provides some great shock and vibration protection all the way across the supply chain when it's being transported. This is the new innovations for washable adhesives on labels. So a lot of the time, the labels are quite difficult to remove in materials recovery facilities, and they might contaminate the recycling stream. This is a UPM Raflatac innovation with Kiwi labels in New Zealand, and it is one of the first washable adhesives for this style of punnet. The punnet itself is an rPET, so it's a recycled PET, and they are made and sourced locally. The labels are made locally, and it washes in the MRF, so it doesn't contaminate the recycling stream. This one, some of you may have heard of. This is Woolpack. And Woolpack has been developing extremely innovative sustainable packaging designs for many years now. And what their ethos is, what the whole company is built on, is eliminating polystyrene. It's really simple. And this is an innovative replacement for polystyrene. It minimizes humidity, it absorbs moisture, it is recyclable, it has creation of stable temperatures, it has a wonderful thermal insulation. And you ask me what it is, it's wool. So it's coarse wool from sheep that you cannot use for any other jumpers or sweaters or any other clothing item. So it's wool that no one else can use for any other purpose. It's compostable, it's sustainable, and this is a beautiful example of sustainable packaging. So what I would like you to take away is, when you're thinking about circular design, think about this. And I cannot find any better example of teaching you how to design sustainably. So you're using it longer, you're using it again, you're using less, and you're making it clean. Now on the screen, you're more than welcome to grab your phones and download these brochures. These are 2 brochures that the World Packaging Organization have available to you. They are also on the worldpackaging.org website. And one talks about sustainable packaging, and the other one talks about the important role that packaging plays in minimizing food waste. I would recommend that you download them and have a read of them. And if you have any questions on the WPO, please reach out to Pierre or myself. These are my details. And I just wanted to end the presentation with a video that Informal will play. And it's a wonderful example of how to communicate to your consumers your sustainable packaging journey, what you're doing, so that they can understand and take ownership as well, and support what you're doing to make changes. Thank you.
With a little help, we can make a big change. Now made from 100% recycled plastic.
All right, so thank you very much, Nerida. It's very interesting and very nice advertisement. I can become another bottle if you like recycle me. It's very good idea from Coca-Cola. So right now I'm going to introduce you to our known speaker from Seal Air, Mr. Surendra Soni. He is going to speak on sustainable packaging for the food sector. So you can see from Ms. Nerida that present, Seal Air also get the awards on the sustainable packaging design. And also today we have our speaker who is the Senior Marketing Director, Asia Pacific, Mr. Surendra. May I invite you to be on stage, please?
Thank you very much, Kunrose. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Okay, great. Yeah. First of all, acknowledgements. Thank you to ProPak Informa Markets for putting this wonderful series of webinars together. It's always great to be back on these sessions. And to World Packaging Organization, Professor Pierre Nerida for inviting Sealair over on this occasion and share our thoughts on sustainable packaging. So a pleasure always. I'll just share my screen in a moment. Kunros, can you just confirm that the presentation is up and live?
Yes, it's up in live, but yes. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And a very good morning, good afternoon, a good evening, Sawadee Khap to all the participants on the call, depending on where you're dialing in from. This is Surendra Soni. I'm the Sector Marketing Director for Sealed Air, which is a flexible packaging leader, and I'm based out of Bangkok. Today, I'm going to focus more about what Sealed Air believes in terms of sustainability and what have been our contributions in the food packaging space. So I'll start with a rather rhetorical question to all of you. Should sustainability be a key agenda for all of us? When I say all of us, you as consumers, we as packaging producers, and the intermediaries who are actually using these packaging solutions and then packing various kinds of products, food particularly in my discussion. And I'm sure many of you, I can see a lot of you nodding your head, also possibly asking as to, is that a question? I think the larger aspect of this question is really not about should, but really as to why and how. And that's precisely the point that we will dwell on as we progress on the discussion. So I'll start with a small story. This was back in the COVID days, peak COVID days. And on one of the days, my teenage daughter came up running and started asking me as to what is single-use plastic. So the packaging thought leader in me, right, really leapt the question and said, okay, so you want to know what is SUP? And over the next 30 minutes, I gave her all that I had gathered on single-use plastic as well as essential plastic. At the end of a week, when I actually asked her as to what has been the use of the input that I gave you, she said we completed our environmental pollution project for submissions to the school. And this is what I eventually gathered. And no surprises there. What she had to tell us was that it seems that in our quest for convenience as consumers, we've come to use too much of this packaging, to the extent now that, as Professor Pierre alluded to, it's ending up in oceans, beaches, and affecting all kinds of marine life. So that is a small story, giving the perspective, setting the stage for this discussion as to why this discussion is extremely important for all of us to be having, right? And I'm sure that all of us have seen this particular picture. It has been doing the rounds of various discussions, forums, platforms. But the good part is it is really driving awareness of how mismanaged the entire plastic waste is in our world out there. And I think it's a time for us to reflect on this particular aspect as to how can we move away from mismanaged to managing this. A similar thought process, it's not just hearsay, because at Sealair, we really believe in conducting and getting live feedback. So in the recent past, we actually did a consumer survey across a set of consumers across a set of geographies, as you can see on the screen. And when we asked them as to what are the top 3 environmental concerns that occupy your mind space, the biggest one, and no surprises there, was ocean plastics. And the second one was in many other countries, the second one, which was vying for the top space, was the food waste that was happening. So in my discussion today, I'm going to be talking about these 2 aspects and seeing as to how we as consumers, we as processors, users, should be taking steps to eliminate this kind of waste. and make the world a bit more sustainable. So the positive side to the entire bad press that is happening is that a lot of organizations, a lot of corporates have taken on this particular pledge and have declared, so to say, a war on waste. So there's a good amount of discussion. There's lots of positive action that is happening, which is the good part. But there's still a lot more to do, right? So the question to you all on this afternoon's call is: are you all ready to do your bit? And I'm sure each one of is doing our bit. And the question is, how much more can we do in terms of our realizing our own responsibilities and in making the world a bit more sustainable? So the second part of the equation to the why is really the global food waste, right? And all of us, many of us do know that almost a third of the food that is produced in the world goes waste without getting consumed. So this is the entire supply chain, starting from post-harvest until the time it reaches the consumers' homes. So in this entire supply chain, these are the numbers. As you can see, produce suffers the biggest hit at about 45%, going all the way down to dairy at about 20%. And just to give you a perspective, right, what does 1.6 billion tons mean to us? It's about more than 2 million airplanes, A380s put together. If you were to stack them with all the food that goes waste, it would mean more than 2 million airplanes, right? So that's the humongous amount of nature of waste that is going, food waste that is happening every single year in the world. Yeah, so as I said, almost a third or more than a third is never eaten. And that's enough to actually feed almost 45% of our population today. Possibly 3 of those continents, all of those can be fed if we found a good methodology to be able to save that particular food from going waste. And the other fallouts really are of food waste is that it is the single largest contributor to landfills. On last estimates that I learned, it is about 20% of the landfills in the US is primarily attributed to food waste. And at the same time, it leads to about more than 4 gigatons of CO2 equivalents of gas emissions. What does this mean to us? This means that imagine a world with the entire set of vehicle or population letting out emissions, right? And this amount is equal to that entire traffic pollution that happens. So the food waste, gas emissions equals to the road emissions totally in the world. So that's another big challenge that we have staring us in the eye. So if you look at the totality of the problem, if you look at the complexity of this particular problem, it's not just that part of the food that is going waste, right? It's not just that 1/3 of the food is going waste. It's the drain on the resources that is really taxing. It's the drain on that particular 20% of landfill, those 4 gigatons of emissions that are happening. It's the drain on that particular resources like precious fresh water that is getting consumed to produce this. Eventually, all of that food is going down the drain, literally, so to say, right? So the problem is not just about food waste, but it's about the resources that gets added to that entire equation. I think as responsible consumers, responsible producers, it's incumbent for all of us to be looking at ways and means of addressing this problem. And at Sealed Air, we realize this, and this is in our ethos. It's we could say that it is the very raison d'etre, reason of our existence. So at Sealed Air, we take pride in saying that we are in the business to protect. And what does protection here mean for all of us, right? Protection from that food going waste, or protection from that particular automated component or electronic gadget from getting damaged during shipment. So that's the business of protection that we're talking of. We are here to solve critical packaging challenges of our customers with the sole intention of leaving the world better than where we found it, right? So as to make it more sustainable for the future generations to come. So this is just a quick snapshot on what Sealair is all about. As I said, we are in the field of flexible packaging. 2/3 of our packaging focuses on food and adjacent markets, 1/3 towards non-food applications across a variety of industry sectors, e-commerce, transportation, and so on. But the important aspect is that at Sealair, sustainability is at the heart of everything that we do, primarily the innovation and development that we do. And as a responsible organization, we have signed up for this 2025 pledge, where we're talking of 100% recyclable or reusable solutions, or eliminating plastic waste in the streams, and eventually collaborating for change, being the change that you want to see, right? And that's what Mahatma Gandhi said. So collaboration is with a lot of like-minded NGOs, associations, foundations, and other organizations to make the world a better place to live. So let's look at as to how do we do it. The why part is now clear, right? So how do we do it? And to me, I think there are two fundamental equations to the how part of it. And that is, I think Professor Pierre as well mentioned this particular point, saying education is the key. Educating consumers, educating ourselves, making sure that we are actually solving the right problem. So how do you go about doing that? And why is it important? Again, right? So I keep asking this, why and how. Education is important because perception and reality are not always the same. So let me give you that through a research that we did. When we asked consumers as to which one is more harmful to the environment, is it the packaging material or the discarded food? The answer was not a surprising, 88% of them said packaging material is more harmful, right? Whereas let's look at the true picture, which is a life cycle analyst view, which again is being validated through numbers. And if you were to look at the poultry supply chain in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, what you see here is the packaging contribution to the greenhouse gas emissions is just 4% to that entire equation. There are larger culprits to that equation, which is production itself, or processing, home cooking, avoidable, unavoidable waste, and so on and so forth. So, and this is where I think we got to put the narrative right in its right place and start taking action. So that is the why part of the consumer education. The other part to why is also as to helping us consumers make more informed decisions, right? In terms of the usage of the plastic itself and post-usage, proper waste disposal. Because as consumers, a lot of us, at least until I was not educated, I would say, was a culprit in terms of not taking the right actions, I would say. Okay. And all of that boils down to us getting ourselves acquainted with what single-use plastic is, what essential plastic is, trying to understand those differences and making appropriate usage decisions of those plastics. If I don't need a small short-time transport container, am I well off with reusable container for that? Okay, those are the questions that are really prompted by making ourselves aware of these things. Right? Essential plastic, on the other hand, is really not just a transport carrier, but it is serving a functional need. And what is that? It could be around food safety, it could be around shelf life extension, it could be around critical healthcare purposes, right? So all of that is essential plastic. And the European Union has actually issued certain directives, as you see on the screen, in terms of clearly calling out what essential food packaging is as compared to single-use packaging, which could be all of these stuff that eventually end up in the oceans because of bad disposal decision making. So at Sealed Air, we believe in this particular waste hierarchy, which is talking about reduction first. And when I say reduction, it's really about, say, if I have a solution which uses 175 microns of a film, and I'm running a certain application on that particular film, can I be able to deliver similar performance in terms of shelf life extension, in terms of food waste reduction, in terms of package protection, by reducing 175 microns to say 150 microns. So we talk about down gauging or lightweighting of materials in our innovation and development programs with our customers. As a consumer, I could think of as to how can I reduce my packaging consumption per capita, right? And those are the discussions, those are the questions that one needs to be asking themselves. So the first real point is about talking about reduce, and then you go on to reuse, recycle, and so on. And the most important aspect, again, I would like to dwell on is disposal, right? So it is all about making the right informed choices as to how and where do you dispose, depending on the collection, the sorting, and the recycling infrastructure in your geographies. So we spoke about the first part, which was consumer education. Now we're talking about the second part, which is the innovation itself, right? And at Sealed Air, we believe that in our construction, in our design, packaging design, and Nerida gave a lot of examples to packaging design, we not only just look at the material of construction, but we look at putting the entire design together as to how do you put all the various components together as a package and deliver it out to the market, keeping in mind the end recovery as to how will this packaging be recovered eventually. So all of this are clearly top of mind for us when we design new packaging solutions. And the fourth game is really education that we just spoke about a couple of minutes ago. So at Sealed Air, we also take pride in partnering with a lot of partners across the globe in terms of enabling circularity, which is all about post-consumer or post-industrial waste being reutilized into various streams. One of the important aspects was that if we looked at the Sealed Air's perspective on ESG, right, environmental social governance goals, you will find that for us, innovation, product safety, quality, circular economy, post-consumer waste, all of these occupy really high space, right? And all of this eventually go in terms of deciding as to how we play there in the market. Because for us, sustainability is not just a buzzword, right? It is a source of differentiation, and we believe that this can potentially and very well lead us to creating competitive advantage in the markets. So innovation and development, when I talk about, and the policies, the guiding principles that I spoke about in the earlier slide, that's not just mere words or policies. The proof of the pudding is always in the eating it, right? So I have a few examples that I want to share with all of you here. So take a case in mind, case in point is this particular picture that you see here. This is a dispenser, and these are the pouches. These are sauce pouches. This solution is called as the Flex Prep solution, which goes into food service, back of house sauce dispensing on burgers, pizzas, and stuff like that. And in a typical food service outlet, conventional dispensing systems have always given a maximum yield of 90% from the package, which means 10% of the sauce is always going waste, right? In Flex Prep, we have worked very, very closely with one of the largest QSR brands, and we have developed this particular solution, which we've launched already, hereby reducing that particular wastage, improving yields. So we have been able to move the yield improvement from 90% in conventional to almost 98% with Flex Prep. So that's a classic example of how we address food waste by packaging? How do we look at the bigger picture on sustainability? There are other examples which are not food related, and you can see we are talking of 100% recycled content usage in our solutions, or the Darfresh brand with in conjunction with Mondini, where we're talking of almost 30 to 40% lesser usage and a zero trim, zero scrap film being used on tray sealers to use on tray lidding applications or tray skin applications. So these are the kind of solutions that we constantly keep working on. And there are 3 case studies. So as I said, the proof of pudding is in the eating it. And this is a recognition of the industry where Sealer's innovative packaging designs have consistently won different awards. And case in point is this fresh poultry customer, where they recorded almost a 25% increase in shelf life, or the avocado customer, where shelf life increase was from 10 days, because in its natural state, avocado can only stand for about 8 to 10 days. But with our Freshness Plus, we could extend it to 30 days. And with further processing using a new innovative technology, we were able to extend it to 90 days. What does this mean for all of us? It really means that as consumers, as processors, as retailers, we're able to reach out to a wider section of the geography and prevent that particular food from going waste, and at the same time make decent margins while benefiting yourself, also benefiting the environment at large. So these are some of the examples that have been acknowledged and rewarded by the industry. So the last slide that I'll really leave you is this, for something for you all to ponder on and think about, what is it that we can do? Are we ready to do our bit in terms of making the world more sustainable? Thank you, and happy to connect with you. You can reach out to me if you have any questions.
All right.
Back to you, Kun Rose.
Thank you very much, Kun Surenda. Please stay online, stay on the video camera on. And Prof. Pierre, are you there? Can you open the camera on? And Nerida, please, camera on. So that is very clear that food waste is not wasted food always, because you have a lot of like agriculture waste and the waste from like what Mr. Surenda already showed in the example. Now we have about 30 minutes together with the question. Some of the question even about more than 100 words. But anyway, I will go through that. Let's go to the first question first to our lady, Miss Nerida. Because you have mentioned a bit more about SDG from the UN. The question asks is about, what is the packaging industry fit in the sustainability program of SDG? Nerida.
If we talk about, say, food packaging, when we actually are 12.3, which is food waste and food production. So any of the 12s. There's a Friends of Champions 12.3, which the World Packaging Organization are supporters of, and it's about the environmental impact along the supply chain, and the role that packaging plays in minimizing food waste is critical to that. And it's something that Surun was talking about. We need to make sure that when we're talking about food waste, we're talking about what can we do better in terms of packaging design to prevent and minimize food waste wherever possible, all the way from production through to the household. And when you look at examples like many of the ones from Sealed Air, it goes back further than that. It goes back into valorization. And for those who are not aware of valorization, it is taking a product like an avocado that is bruised, that is plowed back into a field that will never be shared and used as food item, valorizing it, which then makes it a commercial product, making it something like a guacamole paste, and then coming up with some really advanced packaging to extend the shelf life of that and making it a commercial solution, which is a great example. Fresh Technologies is a wonderful example of valorization. So there are a number of other SDGs that involve packaging, but particularly around food waste, I would say 12.3.
Marita, I can add to that if you, right?
May I invite Mr. Surendra to add on the commercial perspective and the example that you can give on Seal Air, that you work on sustainability for Seal Air project.
So, certainly. Now, so if you look at UN SDGs, right, and a lot of those have relevance to what we are doing as well. So, for instance, I don't quite recall the numbers, but there is one of the goals that talks about zero hunger, and one of the goals talks about aquatic life, life below water, and we all spoke about that, right? As to how do we educate consumers, and a whole lot of activities that we do at Sealed Air is about education. As I mentioned that, how do you navigate a plastic-free environment? A couple other things is about responsible consumption and production, right? So responsible consumption is and production is all about how do you then use packaging in a way where you can bring down the food waste and link the demand and supply gaps so as to be able to move a higher supply source to a higher demand source, and be able to, by the use of packaging, and be able to reduce food waste in the entire supply chain. So all of these 4 or 5 examples, I think, clearly link to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, Kunros.
That I think your number two is on zero hunger, and 12 is on the production, and 14 I believe is on the aquatic. Yeah, so
thank you for
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So we have done a series of the SDG sustainability in ProPak as well. It is quite new for Asia, but I think we all together have to keep repeating it and educate people. I also not be able to remember the number, just pick up on some. So now come to the next question on the how is the education from your perspective that the industry should educate in terms of the packaging to the consumer? So I may ask our president, because he even shared with me that especially in ASEAN there is a lot of waste from the packaging in the ASEAN country. Any idea to share with the audience here? Prof.
Thank you. I really like this question because it's somehow overlooked many times from all sectors of the industry right across the globe. And I'm not referring to education as sitting in a classroom and someone giving a lesson on packaging. The mere fact that you have all these folk right at this point watching this Zoom webinar, they are being educated. This is part of education. But in addition to it, what I'm saying is that one of the biggest problems we have across the world is that, and I'm making a very general statement, there are many folk that are very set in their ways, and they are unlikely to change their modus operandi at home, because it has to start at home. It's not a matter of starting at work, because work often is driven by certain protocols of that particular company where you're working. I'm referring to having the ethos, the culture at home to do the right thing. In other words, separating your different packaging waste, once you've taken the contents out, is to place it in the right receptacle, in the right bin, so that it can be recycled. Now you've put it in the right bin. Thank you to all those consumers. Now we need the infrastructure that collects those individual bins of that particular waste and takes it to the recycling facility. So you need more infrastructure for the recyclability aspect. And this, and there's another question that I'm going to cover off at the same time. And this is where government needs to help and come in. Because if you look at the success stories around the world, and I focus a lot on Europe here and the EU, because they started to do it successfully. Right at this moment, Austria, for example, has zero to landfill. Zero to landfill. Now, there are the majority of countries that are not zero to landfill. So their culture is changing so much so that I'm told in Austria that if you place a particular material in the wrong receptacle, your neighbor will inform the authorities that you've done the wrong thing. That's how good they've become about it. Now, you might say, well, you know, you're being watched by your neighbors to do the right thing. Yes, that's exactly what it is, but it's working. Because remember the second last slide that I showed, and I said to you, if you remember nothing about my presentation, remember about the point where we are now at 1.5 planet Earths, and we're heading for 3 planet Earths. How do we correct this? There's only one way, and that is to do the right thing. But as Surendra quite correctly said, we've got to also get the front end correct. We've got to have the right materials being used that are recyclable. So there comes education. And now I look at all those people that are involved in design work. You speak to your converters, speak to people like Sealed Air, and ask them, how do I ensure that I have a recyclable material? And they will tell you. We don't expect everyone to know this information, but we do expect all those people that are involved in designing and making decisions to pick the telephone up and phone their supplier and say, Mr. Sealed Air, how can you help me? That is all about education.
All right, thank you, Professor. It is about from home, then it's go to infrastructure. I think in ASEAN, we really need help in order to get the infrastructure done. Like I separate the waste at home, but at the end, when I throw into the government bin, it's all together again. So that's the thing. So our job is to be like giving education, and of course we have Mr. Surendra here. He is a part of making the technology that fit into the sustainable world. So I'm happy to have like various idea, opinions here. So next question is, I'm not sure whether it should go to Nevida or to Mr. Surendra. Is there any possibility to recycle laminated films?
I'll give that one to Surendra.
Wow.
Narita, you were wanting to say something on the previous point, right?
I did, thank you. I just wanted to add, Rose, about education, that one of the biggest shifts is that we must ensure that we have adequate on-pack communication to educate consumers on how they can recycle their packaging. And if you look around the world, and Surendra had a really good slide as an example, there's a US variation, there's an Australasian recycling label, there is OPRL. They are 3 really great examples of very exceptional on-pack communication where it tells you the truth. And there's no greenwashing. It's either recyclable, conditionally recyclable, or not recyclable. It's recyclable in your country. This is the bin you put it in, this component you put in this bin because it's not recyclable. And we need more on-pack communication, and we need consistency around the world so that we have the same communication tools and logos that every consumer around the world can understand easily.
Absolutely. Thanks.
So
Thanks for adding
Mr.
that.
Surendra.
So before I actually go on to the question, Conrose, I'm taking off from the point where you ended. You said that despite we taking effort to putting the particular post-usage packaging waste into the right stream, government have not yet possibly put in, say, the right collection and sorting and recycling infrastructure. But I think as consumers, we can't be running away from our responsibility. Okay, because regulations are going to be coming, and they're going to be coming soon and fast. So I think that we should really not be taking those excuses. We should do our bit, and we should, on the other side, on the contrary, I would say we should pressurize, we should lobby, we should use platforms like this to go out and make that influence, right? End of the day, again, I'll repeat, you have to be the change that you want to see. Okay, Penrose? So with
Thank
that,
you. Absolutely, yeah.
With that, I'll take your next question, which is about recyclability of laminates. Is that so? Right? Okay.
Yes, on the any possibility to recycle the laminated film? Yeah.
I mean, generally speaking, there are various technologies available in the world for recycling, and so literally any kind of material could go if you were to say choose. Chemical pyrolysis, or if you're using mechanical, then obviously there are certain separation that you'll have to do. Now, laminates, depending on the structures, you'll have to do analysis first as to what goes into the primary material. Basis that you choose the right technology. I think that's broadly speaking my answer to that. So yes, technologies are available, but they have to become a bit more cost competitive.
All right. Thank you very much. I would repeat again for I see that the audience here from Thailand, from Indonesia, from Philippines. I think this is a very good platform that to share why taking care of your waste, the separate your waste from home itself is very important to this world. It's like what I said, that there is like the situation that I myself run into, like my kid asks me like, why you have to separate? They are already put it together. So as a game changer, so we, like Mr. Surendra said, we have to be part of this chain. Then it will be there, but it is together. We have to work together. So thank you very much, Mr. Surendra. And the next question go to our lady, Miss Nerida. The question is about which one is more sustainable between PET bottle and glass bottle in all except including the carbon footprint, yeah, in all aspects. So this is a question for you, Nerida.
Okay, so there is no correct answer to that, because it depends on the product that you're putting in it. And it also depends on the supply chain and the geographical location and the transportation that is required. The answer is in life cycle assessment. That's your answer. So it doesn't matter what comparative materials you want to do, you must undertake a life cycle assessment, and it will then determine for you accurately and through science the answers that you need. So you can never make an assumption that one is better than the other without doing a scientific LCA. So a life cycle assessment, there are full LCAs which you can undertake, and there are also small LCAs. So happy to have a conversation offline, but there are some fabulous tools globally, many wonderful tools in varying industries that are available to you. Some that are suitable for food, some that are suitable for packaging, and some that are comparative. So it just depends on what you need to do, but you need to start with a life cycle assessment.
All right, thank you. I think the audience get clear answer that is not like the 100% answer to that. It depends on the analysis. Okay, I think the next question among three of you, I would go for Mr. Surendra because he has a lot of study on that. The question is about how many times can we recycle a packaging material that would not that would not compromise its original functionality properties.
Okay, so I think again this is a pretty broad-based one, and thanks for asking that. But again, there's no clear answer to this because you'll really have to understand as to what is the material of construction of the packaging, what goes into it, what are the environment it kind of gets subjected to, what is the abuse, damage in the supply chain that the packaging material goes through. So there are a multiple number of factors which will eventually decide as to how many reruns can you be doing eventually. So I would say case in if there are specific cases, we could certainly discuss those.
So for the question I just asked now, I would like to tell the audience that if you have any question or specific discussion on particular study, you can raise to Prof. Pierre, Ms. Nerida, or Mr. Surendra for more discussion. So come to my last three questions. The first question will be in paper. It's go for Nerida, I believe. In paper, we cannot keep it on recycling. Okay. After 3 or 4 recycling, the strength will reduce its functionality, and after it will go into the landfills, we cannot keep on recycling it. So how would you address it in terms of like from the WPO perspective on the paper material?
I think I will invite Pierre to also add some additional information to the answer. Paper is about 7 to 8 times for use, if I have my statistics correct, but there are many technical experts that could provide the exact amount for reuse. Pierre, do you think that we should, is there anything else from a WPO perspective you would like to add to that question?
Well, if one looks specifically at paper, and then I also want to add on to what Surendra was talking about on plastics once on the paper side as well. With paper, and you're 100% correct, Nerida, it's around 7, 8 times. And there's no clear cut. As Surendra was saying earlier on, there's no clear cut for plastics either. So, and why is that? You know, why are we not giving straightforward answers? And the simple answer is that the quality of the paper that you started with is very important. So, are you dealing with short grain fibers or long grain fibers from the beginning? And that plays a part. And then the other part is, if it has been recycled once, when it was recycled, was any virgin material added to that recycled material? Because that then affects it as well. So there are all these factors that are playing a part in trying to get a clear cut. But if you took let's say hypothetically, and this is definitely hypothetical, if you take a carton, paperboard carton, and you produce a box from it. Then you take that same one, you recycle and produce the same box again. And in a sterile environment, then you get the answer of 7 to 8 times. But all these other factors play a significant part in determining how many times it's recycled. So it's better saying we will recycle it so long as the quality of that end product is still okay for use. I think that's the easiest answer. Coming to the plastic, the same principle applies then. If I gave you a plastic bottle and I said, how many times has this bottle been recycled? You don't know. You don't know how many times. When the recycled bottles come back from the marketplace, who knows how many times they've already been recycled? So again, it's not a clear-cut answer. If you took a hypothetical case in a clinical trial and you produced one bottle, and then you recycled that bottle, crushed it up and recycled, and then made it again, the exact same bottle, same conditions, then you can maybe get a finite answer. In the real world, there is no finite way of doing it. So who knows how many times the bottle can be recycled.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Yeah, I think whatever material, it's similar answer. It depends on the original also and how we analyze and go into the functionality of each. I came to the next question, Prof. P.S. Since it is very long, so I have to read it, and I think you already there. So in terms of the sustainability, that to meet the market criteria for performance and cost manufacturer, where must be the cooperation and support from the government, and what is the private sector and people in the country who control and who to audit it. Yeah.
Okay. Right, and it's a very long question. There's so many answers in there. You know, it will take a long time to answer. I have no intention of answering every single aspect there. However, and all the three speakers tonight have this afternoon have in fact touched on this. So in the perfect world on recyclability, we need cooperation from everyone, all sectors. All three of us mentioned that or touched on that. So number one, education, yes, understanding the technical side of it, but then cooperation between government and the private sector. Which countries have been successful are those countries where the private sector industry has worked well with the government in implementation. And in that way, we can then optimize the effectiveness of that design of that material and the energy usage of that particular material. So it's not just a blanket answer for everything. If you take a country where, and let's take a Southeast Asian country, let's take Indonesia as an example. Indonesia has they've got some recycling happening, but they've got a lot of recycling that's not happening. And the problem there is that the collection systems are not working effectively. Why they're not working effectively? Because we've seen that in countries where there are incentives. In other words, there's a buyback scheme, there's a money incentive. Those schemes work well because a lot of people live off the collection of it. So again, I use Indonesia as an example, where there are buyback schemes, and there are a few buyback schemes in Indonesia, there it works well. But where we're finding waste lying on the curbside and not being collected is because there's no incentive to bring that back to a point for recycling. And that is where government has to play a part with the private sector. I think I've answered some parts of it. And then, of course, I want one more sentence there, and then I'll hand over to you. And then there's the social responsibility. And this is where I said that each one of us has to change our way of thinking and our culture. If our culture is that we toss the rubbish out our motor car, we need to change that culture. And that is the culture in some countries. I've seen it, and they've told me that. So we need to change that. So that social responsibility is really, really important. How do we change that? Back to grade one. At grade one, we start teaching them about how important packaging is once we've removed the contents. Nerida.
I just wanted to add in there that collaboration is absolutely critical across the entire supply chain, because we can't be encouraging packaging designers and technologists in the brands to be rethinking their design processes and making it circular when there isn't a collection or recovery facility available in their country, because it's an investment that they're making, but it's still going to end up in landfill at the other end. So unless you've got the waste recycling industry and the recovery facilities and the reprocessing facilities, flaking, etc., upcycling, downcycling, a part of the conversation, you can encourage and educate and train the packaging designers at this end of the supply chain, but it's not going to end up in the right bins, and it's not going to end up where we want it, which is circular. So you have to work critically across the entire supply chain, but it also is really important to understand value. So we talk about packaging waste, but we shouldn't be talking about waste. Packaging has a value. And all of the recoverables have a value. Each country has a different value and their perception of that value is different. Some are low grade value, some are high grade. So PET, HDP, etc. High grade polypropylene, for example, might not, it might be a little bit lower, but everything is a value and everything has a value to the collectors as well. So particularly like Pierre's saying in Southeast Asia and in Asian countries, the collectors have a value because it helps feed their families. So we need to change the mindset of everybody in the industry to A, work together across the entire supply chain, but also to educate the people around us that packaging isn't waste. It has a value.
Anything to add on, Mr. Surendra?
I think they've beautifully summed it up, both Professor Pierre and Nerida. So yeah.
All right, so I come to the last question. So the last question from the audience here, I would think that may go for, let's say, Mr. Surendra or Nerida on circular economy. What are the new upstream development and system changes for the developing market in terms of the packaging? Go for Mr. Surendra first.
You want to start off, Nerida, on that? You're on mute.
You're welcome to go first. I'll jump in.
Okay, all right. So you're talking of upcycling technology, right, Rose?
Yes, I think you have a lot of development to share as well on the circular economy.
Yeah. So essentially, in terms of circular economy, see, there are various technologies that are coming in. There are actions that are being put in place. But again, I think I'll go back to the point that Nerida just mentioned now, right? So it's really about the chicken and egg, because there's a section of people that are saying that how and why what is the incentive for me to, categorize the waste into the right recycling stream in the absence of a credible, say, sorting and collection and recycling infrastructure. So both these eventually need to start speaking together, and there has to be economic sense. Once it starts making economic sense, today possibly it is just doing on certain resin streams, and then not on a variety of others, particularly, so to say, multi-layers and so on. Okay, so I think once these two start gelling together, there is economic viability that is defined. Then we can possibly see more traction on this. So that's where I would say. Nerida, you want to add to that?
It was just really about scalability and volume, and again goes back to that conversation around value. So if you use the example of Australia, great example, we don't have the volume and the scalability, and we have a difficult geographic country. If you compare us to some parts of like America and countries where there's a higher volume, Asia is a wonderful example. The value and the scalability and the volume's there to justify the upcycling. So it really is regional, and you really need to have those conversations locally when you're talking about scalability and volume and the value that it brings back to that country.
All right, that's very clear information on that. Prof. Pierre, yes, I give you for sure to add. Since we have 2 minutes, I want to ask one question, because I see the audience here about 180 overs, and then there is a question for the group from Philippines that a lot of them are like MSME. They said to implement the sustainable packaging, how should they start to adapt to it? They're only concerned about the cost. So what can be like, it will entail to the end up with a big cost, or how should they adapt to it? Yeah, Prof, give you a chance.
Rose, thanks very much, because that's exactly what I wanted to answer. I saw that question, and I know that there are people listening there that all they're concerned about is cost. And let me put your mind at ease, and I'm sure that Surendra will add to this. It's because it's sustainable does not mean it's high expense capital outlay for those micro businesses. Remember what I said in my presentation? I spoke about monofilms. And generally speaking, a monofilm is cheaper than a multilaminate. So that's a good place to start. Now, it depends on what you're packing. But what I can say, because I know we're short of time, if this person, and looking at the questions, there's a Joanne that asked this question that you're relaying now. Go onto the WPO website. You'll find my email address there. Write to me. I'll answer you and I'll explain it all to you. It does not have to be expensive. Surendra, I'm sure you can add to this from a manufacturing perspective.
Sure, absolutely, Professor. So if you recall, I had spoken about Flex Prep as a solution, and I'm just bringing in this perspective because, as I said, see, with the Flex Prep solution, what really happened was not only did we deliver a higher yield there to the consumer, to those QSRs at the back of house processing, at the same time, we reduced the environmental footprint, right? And what we typically do is in these kind of solutions, we look at the total picture, what we call as the total cost of operation. And then we do our value analysis. So clearly, if you were to come forward with a challenge, we would consider all aspects of costs that go into your cost of operation and arrive at a total cost of operation, so to say. And in this particular Flex Prep example, while delivering superior savings, superior technology and yield improvements, we were also able to have a lower cost in use for the consumer there, for the processor there. So happy to discuss case by case and take that particular discussion forward with those of you that are interested.
All right, so anyone want to reach to WPO team, you can email, and I definitely will give the contact of Mr. Surendra in the chat after this session. So today I would like to thank you, ขอบคุณค่ะ Mr. Surendra, Prof. Pierre and Nerida. Thank you very much. And I hope all the audience enjoy the discussion today. Together with us, there will be another 2 sessions in this week. We will meet Ms. Nerida again under the Australian International Packaging. So they will share about sustainable packaging. And tomorrow, we will have the Thai way of Thai packaging design that's going to share with you how to make the sustainable packaging design. Thank you very much for being with us today and see you again tomorrow. Thank you. ขอบคุณค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ ขอบคุณครับ